moment that made me realise that I didn't want to continue living the kind of life that I was living. The first 15 years of my career, I was probably not a particularly nice person to be around, if I'm completely honest. I was on what I call the treadmill of doom. We were living in a fabulous house, we had great cars, we'd have really expensive holidays, it all looked great, that was my ego. And that just meant that I found myself in a situation, it was a particularly kind of brutal time for leadership. And so I was taught by my elders to behave in a way that I now know is probably completely opposite to what good leadership is all about.
Welcome to Stories Untold, live from Cairns Crocodiles. We're unpacking the stories we carry but don't always tell, the stories we've untold ourselves and the stories that are still being written. In this series, we're going to spotlight the overlooked, the unpolished and the unspoken experiences that have shaped some of Australia's most creative and influential minds. Let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Stories Untold, where we are unpacking the stories we carry but don't always tell, the stories we've untold ourselves and the stories that are still being written. I am joined by Sherilyn Shackell. Sherilyn is the founder and global CEO of the Marketing Academy, an organisation that has fundamentally transformed leadership in marketing, not just in media, but beyond. Known for her radical honesty, heart-led impact, and fierce belief in human potential, Sherilyn has built far more than a brand. She has built a movement. Sherilyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm having a great time.
So we're going to get a little bit behind the curtains today.
Okay.
So, Sherilyn, when someone asks you what you do, what do you tell them?
I tell them I have the privilege of running one of the best leadership development organisations in the world.
And what do you wish you could tell them you do?
I wish I could tell them it was in 54 countries.
So, Sherilyn, what's a story about you that rarely gets airtime but says everything about who you are?
I used to be absolutely shit at leadership.
Okay.
So,
What's the story there?
I don't know, the first 15 years of my career, I was probably not a particularly nice person to be around, if I'm completely honest. I got into recruitment quite young. I was in my early 20s. And it's a really quite ruthless, quite cutthroat industry. At least it was then. I think it's probably evolved a bit, but it was then. And it was in the 80s. And in the 80s, it was a particularly kind of brutal time for leadership. And so I was taught by my elders to behave in a way that I now know is probably completely opposite to what good leadership is all about. And so I was really competitive. I was probably a bit ruthless. And I was completely control and command. I mean, I literally was just telling people what to do, how to do it my way, do it in these timescales, do it with this budget. What I say goes. Yeah. And that is how I led, appallingly, for a good 15 years, until I went through my own kind of leadership journey, if you like. I met a woman who runs an incredible leadership program that is embedded in the scholarship program now everywhere in the world. And I remember going through this training course, as it was at the time, and thinking, holy shit, I thought I was great. And I'm absolutely awful. And it really shone a light on what I now can see were really, really bad behaviours. So I think I was probably a relatively good manager, but when it came to leadership, oh my God, what I never understood that leadership was about them and not about me. And I never understood that my role as a leader was to enable them to thrive, to develop them to thrive, to empower them, to inspire them. I didn't know any of that. I thought I had to tell them what to do.
So if we think about that sort of quantum leap between management and leadership, what are the things that you let go of that in retrospect were holding you back?
I had to let go of control. I had to let go of fear. I was driven by fear. Fear, ego and pride. The worst management out there are usually driven by ego, fear and pride. And I had all of that in spades.
And so in putting those things down, what did you pick up?
That leadership is about generosity and love and caring and compassion and collaboration and, enablement and empowerment and actually getting purpose from seeing others thrive, not just survive, but thrive. So I had to let go of facets that were deeply embedded in who at that time I thought I was, and become who I needed to be.
How do you build that muscle? Right? That takes, I would imagine, an immense amount of self-awareness, and I guess, letting go of the hubris and the ego. Is that something that you believe is innate, or can that be trained?
Oh, I believe you can learn it.
Okay.
It's a choice.
Okay.
So first and foremost, it's a choice, which means you've got 100% ability to choose. So that's quite empowering. And I had to realise that I was going to be a bit shit at it for quite a while, right? and then forget. Yeah, I'd fuck up all the time, right? I'd go, I'm going to walk into this meeting and I'm going to be really, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what everybody else's ideas are. And then the first words out of my mouth was, well, that's a bit of shit. And I'd think, oh, God, I've just done it again. And so it is just like a muscle. And it's what we teach our scholars. Leadership is a muscle that just takes small acts consistently. So if you have to changing any behaviour is difficult. But if you do small little tweaks, time and time again, that muscle just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So I still fuck up now. I can still, if the shit hits the fan and we're in panic mode, I can still feel this sort of visceral need to take over and control things. But if I do that, the minute I do that, I literally disempower my people. I literally send a message to my people saying, you're not good enough to manage this crisis without me. And that's shit. I may need to make some decisions, and I may need to say to them, time is tight, we're in a shit situation, I have to make some decisions, so I'm going to be a little bit telly for a while. Yeah. But you can't stay in that place for long without completely disempowering your team or sending the message that they're not good enough without you.
Was there a defining moment where you took that fork in the road that has led you to where you are now, which is this profound movement that is the Marketing Academy?
Well, there is. I guess there is a single moment that made me realise that I didn't want to continue living the kind of life that I was living. Because if you remember, if I'm driven by ego, pride and competitiveness and fear, I'd found myself in my early 40s in a successful role. I was the owner and CEO of quite a big headhunting company. I was working 16, 17 hours a day because I wasn't developing my people, I wasn't developing my team, which meant I had to work harder. And I didn't trust them because my ego was too big. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy of complete shitstorm. Because what happened was I just made myself ill. I got ill, really, really ill. And I had an illness that could have killed me in hours that I truly believe was the manifestation of just how discordant a life I was living. I'd been through this leadership program, so I kind of knew what good looked like, but I'd held on to these behaviours for so long and was finding it hard to let them go. And knowing that was the wrong thing. So very discordant and working too hard, worrying too much about what I've called it this before. I have told this part of the story before. I was on what I call the treadmill of doom. So we were living in a fabulous house. We had great cars. We'd have really expensive holidays. It all looked great. That was my ego. And that just meant that I found myself in the situation of having to work harder to keep it all. Because the fear of losing it started to freak me the fuck out, right?
And the luster wears off after a while.
Well, I couldn't even enjoy the luster. There was no luster. I wasn't spending time with the kids. I'd go on holiday with my mobile phone slapped to the side of me. I wasn't enjoying it. I was actually making myself ill. And so I was on this treadmill. And I remember saying to my husband at times, I can't get off. I can't get off. I can't stop what I'm doing, darling, because we'll lose the house. And I've always been the breadwinner. And so what happened is I got really ill, which, I look back now and think, duh. Well, that was just the universe giving you, the reason to change. And my recovery from that illness led to the marketing, directly led to the marketing academy. And loads of other things that happened. helped me to create it, and loads of people and lots of people involved. But recovering from that illness, I was like, I have to accept that I've created this. And if I'm going to live, if I'm going to continue to live, I've got to live a very different type of life. And I was passionate about leadership development and passionate about talent. And I wanted to get off this corporate, commercial, ego-led thing of greed. And so that meant I needed to do something that was either a charity or a not-for-profit. I now do both. The Marketing Academy is a not-for-profit, and we have a foundation in the UK which is a charity, so I do both. So that illness for me was the defining moment. I was 42 when it happened. I had a 9-month-old baby and a 10 and 11-year-old. And by the time I was 45, we launched the Academy. So it was about a year recovery and then a year creating the Academy.
If ever there was a silver lining.
Yeah.
So what part of the work that you do are you most proud of that none of us see?
I mean, look, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? So you'd have to ask 1,400 alumni around the world exactly what they believe the power is. The bits that I see happen that I just think, oh my God, that's amazing, is the relationships between the cohorts, in the cohorts. We didn't think about that when we first launched it. It was only ever going to be a one-year programme. It was only ever going to be 25 people in the first year. So only going to be for 25. And what we believed would be the impact was that we knew that the leadership stuff would be, we knew the coaching would be good, and we knew that the mentoring would have an amazing impact. So we have really senior, expert, older mentors around the world. But what I don't think we anticipated was the power of bringing that community of talent together and having them together for a sustained amount of time, all experiencing this. I don't say it's not a course, it's not a training course, it's an experience. Yeah. And the power of the relationships between them is profound. We've had 2 marriages, got a baby, they've set up businesses together, they've hired each other, they've worked with each other, and it's such a vibrant community. And now we've got relationships forming between cohorts and between programs and between regions. So it's like this quiet power that you see when you bring together people who are learning to be their best versions of themselves. So you already know they all want that, and then they're going through that journey together. And and it's not easy. You know, the program is not an easy program. It can be quite confronting sometimes. We do take the learning deep, it's at a heart level, but for them to experience it together is something that's really special.
From all of the marketers that you have groomed along the journey, what is the most important story that they need to untell themselves?
That they can't do it, that they're not good enough. I cannot tell you how many. We have tens of thousands of applications around the world for all of our programs, and they provide us with a CV, an employer's endorsement, and what we call the 2-minute showcase me. And in the 2-minute showcase me, we say, we're not interested in what you do for this bit, we're interested in who you are. Yep. And I cannot tell you how many of them say, I've got a confidence problem. Right? Less so in America. Bless them. Less so in the States. But still, they have it, they just don't share it.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, but I want it eradicated off the face of the planet. I think it's a narrative. It's a narrative that people tell ourselves, right? We are our own worst critics. You know, everybody's got that little voice in the back of our head.
What's the story that marketers need to start writing for themselves?
That they can change the world.
Okay, why do you say that?
Because marketing, media and advertising can influence every single human being on the planet. So, look, we believe, I need to give you context, we believe that leadership and the definition of a leader is about influence. And that's really all it's about, right? So if you've got influence over another human being, good, bad or indifferent, you're leading. Our industry, marketing, media and advertising holistically, is the only medium function industry sector that can have a direct influence on the 8 billion people that are on the planet. We literally can influence what they think, how they feel, what they buy, what behaviour they exhibit, how they parent, what choices they make. I mean, that's a hell of a power, right?
And why do you think that isn't the conventional wisdom?
I've no idea. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
It's my mantra, and I don't think. I mean, how can you dispute it, right? How do people believe things? How do people behave in ways? When they walk into a supermarket, their decisions might be financial. They may be, but which detergent are they going to buy? If you take the price away, it'll be the marketing. You know, the way that they want to show up. So I think our industry is the leadership industry, right? And that's the story that all marketers should be telling themselves, because, you know, marketing, we believe that marketing should be in the centre of the boardroom, and it's not, and it's undervalued, and it's underinvested in, but my God, it is the engine of growth. Marketers need to be telling themselves that story, so that they can be in the centre of that boardroom. They can influence the rest of that boardroom.
Which comes back to the self-belief,
yes.
dynamic.
You know, you have to be able to explain to a CEO who usually knows fuck all about marketing. He'll say, I've just seen what we've just done on TikTok. Like, fuck off. You've got to be able to explain to the CEO exactly what power you can bring them. Because I just think there's a real gap in awareness, and there's a gap in our storytelling of it.
Which is ironic.
I know.
What's something that you were taught about success that you've actively unlearned?
Oh, I know exactly what that is. So this is from my mum, right? My mum was an entrepreneur back in the days where women didn't do that. And my dad was a house husband back in the days when they didn't. We're talking about the 1960s. And she told me, my whole childhood, she said to me, you're going to get to the top, you are. And I believed her. And I thought for decades that was what I had to do. I had to do that because my mum told me. My mum telling me that was telling me that she wanted that for me. And therefore that's what I strived for the first 35 years of my life. And that was part of having to let go that whole ego shit thing. I had to stop telling myself that I had to get to the top, and I had to choose to parent differently. I've never said those words to my children. I've said they're capable of it if they want to, but I've never said that's where you're going to go, because that's a tremendous amount of pressure. She did it out of love, as all parents do, right? Totally out of love. And like I said, I believed her, so she gave me I had a lot of self-esteem. I wasn't a shrinking violet as a child, but I had to unlearn that. Why would I put so much power over how I feel around where I get to in the hierarchy? Well, and I was 40 before I understood that wasn't the way to go.
And so what do you tell your kids?
I tell them that they're capable of doing anything, and they can do whatever the fuck they like, and I will be absolutely thrilled and delighted and ecstatic for them. They can literally do whatever they like. I hope that we've put no pressure on them, you know, we didn't even put pressure on them to go to uni. I didn't go to uni. I was like, if you don't want to go, you don't want to go. If it's not for you, it's not for you. You find something else, you'll figure it out. So they did. But they did because they wanted to. And I just want them to have experiences and do what they like. My 19-year-old's on a gap year. I don't even know whether she'll bother to go to uni. I wanted to go travel, just go and have some fun. There's a little tiny part of me. I didn't have that, right? I didn't go to uni. My dad died when I was 19. My mum got ill, mentally ill, very, very quickly after my dad died. And my family had to declare ourselves bankrupt. So I had to really work, and my mum was, I had to take care of my mum until she died years later. So I didn't have a gap year, I didn't go to uni, I didn't do all that fun stuff. And now I've got with my girls, I'm kind of like, there's this tiny part of me, and I'm praying they won't hear this, but there's a tiny part of me that is, go and get fucked up. Like, go and take a few drugs. Go and experience things, like go and have some fun. Because I never did that. And look, I think that life is...
Still got time.
Yeah, I've had time. Yeah, meet you later, around the back. I've never taken a drug in my life. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm like, go, enjoy. So, I just want them to have the best experience they can have. They could do anything.
They're lucky kids. Beyond mum, what voices influence you and have shaped where you've landed?
Where I've come from.
Yeah. What are the voices that you lean on? There's someone that I, even here over the last couple of days, so many people lean on you. for guidance? What are the voices that you seek?
Oh, I'm really lucky. Like the Academy brought amazing people into my life, like really, truly amazing, deep relationships that formed in my 40s, which is quite unusual. So some of the deepest relationships I've got are like 10 years old. And I haven't got very many relationships from when I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s because I was working so hard, I never invested in them. And so I am surrounded by these fabulous people who I know I can cry on the shoulders of, or I can go to for advice. So, you know, I've got, most are involved in the Academy, but I've got Terry Savage, who's my global chair. So, you know, when I'm really in oh my God, I've got a decision to make, I'll phone him up and go, Dad, I need you to, am I being fucking stupid here? I've got Sil Salah, who came into the Academy 10 years ago. She's a former global CMO of Diageo. She's a voice in my head all the time. I will probably cry on her shoulder. My team are amazing. All of my team are absolutely amazing. And then Terry's wife is one of my closest friends down here. Emma Harris, who's involved down here as well. Maz has only been in my life for like 6 years. She's never going anywhere. We were married in a former life. And so I'm really fortunate that I've got such wonderful, amazing people.
What's the most valuable lesson you've learned from your scholars?
To be really open and really willing to be vulnerable, because it isn't easy, right? It isn't easy for anybody to do that. And when I see, you know, the things I love the most is when we get a scholar who's, you can see is feeling a little confronted and then just chooses to let go, and you can almost watch them just blossom. And I have to keep reminding myself of the power of that, and they're teaching me that.
Which I find interesting because unmasking is such a core part of the program, and I find it very interesting that that's the thing that you learned from them.
Yeah, no, I do. I learn it all the time. I'm watching it happen all of the time. It's reaffirming it. It's reaffirming that it's the right thing all of the time.
I want to talk about marketing truths and contradictions.
Okay.
Because I always value your perspective on this. What's something about the marketing process that you wish more people understood?
I think that we could probably all benefit from bringing a much more human understanding to it. It's interesting. Marketing is such a science, but also such an art. And the art side of science is so human. And I believe we need to not lose that. I think it would be very, very easy to lose the real human, almost instinctive. It's about people, even in B2B. This is why we're seeing such an uplift in really good B2B advertising. We're seeing B2B advertising funny, touching, because their customers are people, and really anchoring in that, I think, is quite important.
And I mean, I'm curious, in an industry that seems to be gravitating, I mean, every industry seems to be gravitating to the artificial, what does a more human industry look like to you?
I think that just being much more open, much more transparent, more investing in the talent more. You know, yes, I think AI is going to completely transform everything. It's the second thing, it's the number 2 on the list of things that are keeping my fellows awake at night. So the fellowship program we run for brand-side CMOs, we've got 400 fellows around the world, and it's number 2 on their list of what's keeping them awake at night is the AI implication. But even in that, I'm kind of thinking, even the CMOs don't have to be experts at AI, right? They just need to be able to hire the really brilliant people who will be experts in AI. I think it was Scott Galloway who said your roles aren't going to be taken by AI, your roles are going to be taken by people who understand how to use AI. So I think it's being overblown and over-talked about a bit, and what's lacking is the real, well, again, it comes back to development, isn't it? How much development are you doing with your talent around AI, right? Yeah. I spoke to a CMO the other day and went, have you seen that OpenAI have launched the AI Academy? They went, no. I'm like, what? I'd have my entire team doing the entire program. It's free. Get everybody experts in it. Why would you not do it? That's the thing you're worried about. Why would you just not? Everybody gets trained up on it. I think what we think is, there's all this new shiny new toy stuff coming. If what you do is you spend all of your time investing in, developing, empowering and inspiring your people, the work will be better anyway. And if you allow them the freedom to make decisions and choices for themselves because you've hired them because they're brilliant and you've developed them to the best of themselves, then you're not even going to have to worry about what AI is going to do to your business.
Do you feel as though secondary and tertiary education is falling out of lockstep with the skills and enabling capabilities that we need as professionals?
I do, without a doubt.
If you could wave your magic wand and I could grant you 3 wishes that would change how marketers are taught in schools and in universities, what would that be?
Number 1 is that leadership would be taught at 8, 9, 10 years old.
Ooh. Why then?
So I would have leadership principles embedded right from year dot. Look, things like listening. I don't teach anybody how to listen.
Yeah.
How insane is that? Like, not taught how to deeply listen. We don't teach anyone how to question. I've got a theory about AI. AI is all about the prompts, right? Which is really about how to articulate brilliant questions. Even my scholars, bless them, can be absolutely shit at asking, framing a really high game question. So you know when you're in a conference and it's the Q&A and somebody lifts their hands up and they talk for about 50 seconds before they get to the point of the question, because they're taught that they've got to make sure that they give context and that there's credibility in their question. No, there isn't. Just frame your question. When are we ever taught how to question properly? And then when are we ever taught how to inspire? When are we ever taught to create a team? When are we ever taught about diversity of thought in school? If we were taught this stuff in school, it'd be transformational. It won't happen straight away. Obviously, it would be generational, but I think it would be transformational. So I would change the entire school system, start dropping all this shit around fucking algebra and whatever, and I would bring in what some people call the soft skills, but I say essential human skills into the curriculum. And then from a marketing perspective, I mean, look, I'm not a marketer. I never studied marketing. I've learned everything that I know from my scholars mostly. But there are really, really, really good courses out there from people who have seen it and done it. And I am much more in favour of those types of organisations than I am academic. Now, there's a place for academia, there really is, so I respect it. Yep. I just have met quite a few professors in marketing from various unis around the world, and they've never practiced, and they're older, and therefore I think there can be some disconnects between what's happening in the real world. So programs like the Academy, like the Institute for Real Growth, like Mark's mini MBA, those kinds of programs I think are phenomenal, and we should have more of that.
In the world of marketing, what is beyond AI? What do you think is being redefined right now?
I think we're all probably looking at I think it is the AI thing that's doing it. Look, I think we are striving to find a new playbook, right? I think the agency world is in a really challenging time, and I don't believe that anybody's got the answers yet. They're all striving to find the answers. We are going through that whole pendulum swing, you know, where everything is insourced and then everything's outsourced and then it fucks up and no, it's all going to be insourced again. Same as it ever was, right?
Yeah.
And we're right in the thick of that at the moment. But I do think that AI is the biggest opportunity, and I hope it is an opportunity to help to rewrite that playbook. And the landscape in 10 years' time, I think, will look very different.
I mean, that freight train's coming. I think it's up to us, right?
Yeah.
All right, Sherilyn, I have 3 short untold stories for us to end this little chat.
Okay.
When was the last time you surprised yourself?
Well, I was supposed to do... I came into Sydney 2 weeks ago. I was supposed to do a 50-hour round plane trip to Manhattan for a 12-and-a-half-hour stay in Manhattan. And fortunately, there was a screw-up with my ESTA. But I felt afterwards, I didn't go. And afterwards, I thought, I never should have accepted that. I never should have thought that that was good for me or good for the Academy or good for the audience. And I'm going to start saying no to more things. And I'm not a no person. I'm really not a no. I will say yes to everything because I see opportunity everywhere, which is why I said yes to that. And I'm going to start saying no more, and I'm quite surprised.
Sherilyn, what part of you still feels in progress?
Oh, I am a constant work in progress. Constant work in progress. And if I wasn't, I'd be dead. I mean, it's part of life and living, right?
And what's the work on right now?
I've got some real decisions to make. I've just hit 60.
Congratulations.
Which is also quite surprising, right? I thought I could have died at 42, so hitting 60 is pretty surprising. And now I'm starting to do that thing like, oh my God, like, so what's the next 10 years like? Now, I've never looked further forward than like the next 6 months, ever. I am now starting to vision forward a little bit more, and that's challenging for me. Challenging to see, so what do we do with Academy? 10 years' time. I'm like, what am I doing next? And what am I doing next week? Where's the next boot camp?
Yeah. What does work look like in 10 years' time?
What does it all look like? What does the structure of the organisation look like? How will we be delivering it? What will we be delivering? That's all new stuff to me. So I'm working on that big time.
The best of luck. Last question from me. If this chapter in your life had a name, what would it be? And what would you hope the next chapter's called?
This current chapter right now, enjoyment.
Okay.
This is me. I am so enjoy. Right now, my life is the best it's ever been right now. So I would say this is enjoyment. And the next chapter, well, I hope it's better. Actually, if it's not better, I'd be okay with that. 10 years of enjoyment, I'd be really happy with.
You hope it's a long chapter.
Yeah, I'd be totally happy if my life continues like this. It's brilliant.
Sherilyn, thank you so much for your chat. Ladies and
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
Sherilyn Shackell.